Shalom, welcome everybody. This is Eliyahu Sher from Chesed Ve'emet. You can find my site www.lovingkindness.co and feel free to be in touch with me. We're learning today Gemara Berachot, dealing with blessings. We're currently up to Daf Daled Amud Aleph, that's page 4, and we're on the first side of page 4. It's a very exciting Gemara at the moment, filled with a lot of Agadah, a lot of insight into the story side of life and not just necessarily the halakhic side. Although we started off the Mishnah, and the essence of the Mishnah was discussing when we can recite the Kriyat Shema in the evening, from what time until what time, and all of these stories are coming up to help us understand this concept maybe of evening, the night time, the midnight time, and various stories are coming up with regards to this period of time. Now, in our current discussion, we discussed last week, we ended off with this idea that King David was very humble, and he used to be embarrassed, or he received embarrassment from Mephibosheth, who used to comment on his halachic analysis. King David used to give over a psak in halacha, and he would always consult with Mephibosheth about the halacha, and he would always find that Mephibosheth had something to say that perhaps had a negative connotation to it, and as a result would bring him some embarrassment. But nevertheless, King David had a very special son, as we saw on the previous page in the edition that we're working with. Just as a matter of interest, we're working with the Koren Talmud Bavli. You can see in front of you the text as it appears in the original version, with the Hebrew on the one side, the English translation on the other with all the notes, together with a host of additional notes, backgrounds, and insights into biographies of the various rabbis. So it's an exciting edition to use, beautiful edition to use, and I strongly recommend it for anybody who wants to get more insight into the Gemara studies. And so anyway, we came to this point that King David was blessed on account of the fact that he was prepared to accept the embarrassment. He was blessed with a son by the name of Kilab, and some people say that he was called Daniel, was actually his real name. And for this particular reason, King Shlomo had said in the book of Mishnah that he wrote, in the book of Proverbs, he was speaking about his father when he said this expression that his father was saying, in other words, Beni, im chacham libecha yismach libi gam ani. My son, if your heart will be filled with wisdom, then my heart will also rejoice. And what he was saying is that when he would have the son who would be his backup, who would shame others, ultimately he would show Mephibosheth that he knew something about halacha and bring Mephibosheth a slight measure of embarrassment. This was kind of King David's way of saying that even though he might have been embarrassed through Mephibosheth, he had a son who was outstanding in Torah wisdom, whose Torah wisdom superseded that of Mephibosheth, and that is how he gained his getting his back, so to speak, on this man who embarrassed him. Anyway, it's not a comfortable subject to speak about by any means, and obviously has a lot more depth to it, exactly who these people were and to the degree of the embarrassment that we're speaking about. I'm certain that it goes through many great levels of depth. And now the Gemara continues in a very slightly different angle. The David, mi kare, we're up to this place over here. The David, mi kare lenafshe Chasid. Now, did King David call himself by the term of Chasid? Says the Gemara, a question. V'hakasiv, and isn't it written, says over there, a pasuk in the book of Psalms, in Tehillim, that he wrote, Lulay he'emanti liros betuv Hashem be'eretz chayim. King David says that he's a Chasid. One of the verses in Tehillim says that he is a Chasid. That's how he refers to himself. And the Gemara at this point in time challenges this particular question and says, did David really call himself a Chasid? Doesn't the pasuk say, Lulay, that it says, if I had not believed to look upon the goodness of Hashem in the land of the living, which means to say that apparently King David didn't even assume that he was going to merit good things, perhaps the world to come. What is interesting over here is that if you look at the word Lulay as it appears in the book of Tehillim, one will see that the word Lulay has a number of dots that appear over the word, as he writes over here in the background. And he says in the note here that these dots appear over certain words throughout the Torah, which as a rule is without punctuation or vocalization. Wherever they appear, these dots indicate that further investigation and exposition is necessary. Usually they indicate a caveat regarding the simple understanding of the word or phrase, calling it into question or raising some uncertainty about it. In other words, it's a question in itself. What does this word mean? And here is the word Lulay with the dots that appear over it. Utnami Shmei Rabbi Yossi, and it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yossi. Lama nakud al Lulay. Why are there dots on the word Lulay? Omar David lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what King David said in front of the Holy One, blessed is He. Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe. Muftach ani becha. I am certain in you, says King David. She'ata mishalem sechar tov letzadikim le'atid lavo. That you are certainly going to pay a good reward for the righteous in the future world. When a person dies, or perhaps the next world after Mashiach comes, at whichever point in time King David is referring to at this point in time. Aval eini yodea im yesh li chelek benehim im lav. But King David was saying over here, I'm not quite certain if I have a portion amongst them or not. And that is what King David meant when he said this expression of Lulay. He meant to say, perhaps I do, perhaps I don't. Do I have a portion with these great people? Or perhaps I don't, which means to say that King David couldn't have assumed that he was indeed a Chassid, that he was a pious person. After all, he was involved in at least one major avera, one major sin, in that he was intimate with Batsheva before, so to speak, before marrying her, and he had taken this woman, the wife from Uriah, the Hittite. He had taken her away from him in his desire to be with her, to be intimate with her. And therefore, because of this, because of his sins, he was worried that perhaps he wouldn't really have a portion with the righteous, because a person who's involved in Averas, the Avera might detract from the reward that he could otherwise receive. Shema yigrom achet, said King David. What's the situation? It could be that the sin will cause him to lose out on the opportunity of, as he says over here, upon the goodness to look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, as Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi taught, the Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi Rami Kasiv, that Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, he raises a contradiction. It says the following: V'hinei anochi imach, and behold, I am with you. Ushemartika b'chol asher telech, and I shall guard you wherever you go. In this particular verse, the Torah is speaking about Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our forefather, and that God promises him that he will be with him and he will guard him wherever he goes. Ukasiv, and the pasuk also says, another pasuk says, Vayira Yaakov ma'od, that Yaakov feared very much. On the one hand, God promises to be with Yaakov, and on the other hand, Yaakov says that he was very scared. Why, therefore, didn't he rely upon God's promise? Omar, the answer is that he said, Shema yigrom achet, maybe I committed a particular avera, and as a result of the avera diminished the good that I did, and therefore God will not guard me, G-U-A-R-D, G-O-D, God will not guard me, he will not protect me any longer, because I sinned. Kedetanya, as it was taught in a brisa, Ad ya'avor amcho Hashem, Ad ya'avor amzu kanisa. This pasuk refers to the two aspects of redemption that the Jewish people experienced. The first one is referring to when the Jewish people crossed over the Red Sea, and there it says, until your nation shall pass over, God, until the nation will pass over, this nation that you have acquired. Why does the pasuk speak about these two verses? The first verse is referring to one aspect, and the second verse is referring to another aspect. Ad yavur amcha Hashem, until your nation will pass over, God. Zo biyarishona. This refers to the first time that the Jewish people would come into the land of Israel, into the land of Eretz Israel, at the time of the redemption coming out of Egypt. Ad ya'avor amzu kanisa, until this nation of yours that you have acquired will pass over. Zor biyashnia. This refers to the second time that the Jewish people came into the land of Israel, into Eretz Israel, and this was following the exile of Bavel. Mikan amru chachamim. From here the sages said, Re'uyim hayu Yisrael le'asos lahem neis bimei Ezra, kederek shenase lahem bimei Yehoshua bin Nun. That the truth of the matter is, said the sages, that the Jewish people were fitting that there should be done for them a miracle in the days of Ezra, just like a miracle was done for them in the days of Yehoshua bin Nun. Yehoshua bin Nun took the Jewish people into Eretz Israel with great miracles, and so too it's assumed that when Ezra brought the Jewish people back into the land of Israel after the Babylonian exile, that also miracles should have happened. Ella what? But what do we say? No, the truth of the matter is the miracles weren't done. Why not? Because the sin caused the miracles would not be because of the sin itself. So therefore we see over here from what the teaching comes out in the Gemara, that sometimes it can be that due to a sin, if a person is involved in a lot of good and God makes a promise, it seems to be that if he now goes against God's will, he does bad, he does something that's in the nature of an Avera, that the Avera can diminish what he did, and as a result of that, the miracle that was supposed to happen or the protection that he was supposed to receive will no longer exist. Let us take a look at this note very briefly. Israel was worthy of having a miracle performed on its behalf in the time of Ezra. However, transgression caused the absence of a miracle. In both the Rambam's Mishnah Torah Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, chapter 10, and in his introduction to his commentary on the Mishnah, he writes that promises made by God by means of a prophet will never be retracted, and no sin can affect those promises. This is a very important point. In other words, according to the Rambam, if God promises something good, when a prophet comes along in the name of God and says that something good is going to happen, it can never not happen. If God tells a prophet that a certain bad thing is going to happen, and the bad thing does not happen, that is not a proof that the prophet is not a real prophet, because God can change his will from bad to good. Meaning, if the decree was something evil, God can change it to be something good. And even though the prophet goes around telling people that God has destined there to be something negative, well, if something positive comes about, there is no need to doubt the authenticity of that prophet. However, when a prophet prophesies on the side of good, then even if something goes wrong along the way, we say that God will not retract the good that he is going to do. And therefore, this seems to be difficult to understand. This appears to contradict the statement that transgression caused the rescission of Moses' promise to the Jewish people that entry into Eretz Israel during Ezra's time would be miraculous. One explanation for this discrepancy is that the Rambam wrote this in the context of explaining how to ascertain who is a true prophet. Positive prophecies made by a true prophet are always fulfilled, lest questions be raised about the prophet's legitimacy. Since there is no question that Moses was a true prophet, even if one of his prophecies was not realized due to the people's transgression, no doubt would be raised with regard to his status as a prophet. And it seems to be, therefore, that even though it seems that the miracle should have been done, and the miracle didn't really happen, so therefore there would be what to doubt about the authenticity of Moshe Rabbeinu as a prophet. But it comes out, according to this particular Pious, the explanation on the Gemara, that since everybody already believed in the power of Moshe Rabbeinu, they would never come to suspect that something that he said was not true. And even though it wasn't fulfilled as it should have been, nobody would have said anything negative against Moshe. It seems to be that this was the exception to the rule, that if a prophet says something good in the name of God, that it's not possible that the good will turn into something negative, although in this instance it did turn to something negative. And for that reason, we see over here that King David had the right to feel that perhaps he had done something wrong. And even though he could have been a tzaddik, he always feared that maybe because of his sin, he might not be deserving of the reward that he could have otherwise have received had he carried on along the path of goodness and not committed the particular Aveira that he did. And that concludes that section of the Agadah dealing with King David considering himself to be a Chasid. Now we continue the next section. V'chachamim omrim ad chatzois. And the Chachamim say until chatzois. The Chachamim say that one may recite the Kriyat Shema until midnight. Those who have been following the Shiurim so far will realize these are the exact words of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that when it comes to reciting the Kriyat Shema in the evening, the sages say that you can only recite the Kriyat Shema until Chatzot. Later on, we'll learn that, in fact, you can say the Kriyat Shema right up until dawn break. So that's another opinion. But the Chachamim tell us only until Chatzos. Chachamim, says the Gemara, regarding the sages, Kaman Sevir Lahu. Who do they really hold like? Rabbi Eliezer, do we say that they hold like Rabbi Eliezer, Sevir Lahu? That maybe they hold like Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer said that you can really only say the Kriyat Shema until the end of the first watch. So then if they wanted to say that maybe Chatzos was at the same period of time as Rabbi Eliezer, Leimru ka Rabbi Eliezer. They should have said like Rabbi Eliezer. They should have said just like what Rabbi Eliezer was saying. Because what? Because the reason is, if we read here in the note, that Rabbi Eliezer was speaking about the time that when you lie down is the time when people customarily go to sleep. So then the rabbis should have said, if that's the time, follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. And otherwise it will be until the end of the first watch. We continue on to Daf Daled Amud Beis. This is the second side of page 4. Ve'ika Rabban Gamliel sevir lahu. And if they hold like Rabban Gamliel, as opposed to Rabbi Eliezer, who said the first watch, and Rabban Gamliel, who said until Amut HaShachar, until Alot HaShachar, when the dawn breaks through, Leimru Rabban Gamliel. Then they should have said that they should have just agreed to say like Rabban Gamliel. Why did they say Chatzot? It doesn't make any sense. Answers the Gemara and says, the truth of the matter is, the Chachamim were holding like one particular opinion. They were not holding like their own individual opinion. The Chachamim were not holding and saying that Kriyat Shema can only be said until Chatzos. They were either holding like Rabbi Eliezer until a third of the watch, depending on when a person goes to sleep, or they were holding like Rabban Gamliel until Alot HaShachar, Amud HaShachar, when the pillar of dawn comes up. Which one was it? Le'olam, says the Gemara. The Gemara says that they always held Rabban Gamliel sevir lahu. They hold like Rabban Gamliel, who said right up until the dawn. V'hadaka omri ad chatzos, and that they said that a person can only recite the Kriyat Shema until chatzos, until midnight. The reason is is in order to distance a person from committing a sin, which means to say that their opinion of reciting the Kriyat Shema in the evening of chatzos is not a different opinion at all, but rather it is the same opinion as Rabban Gamliel. Even the Chachamim holds that you can say the Kriyat Shema up until Alot HaShachar, the pillar of dawn. However, why did they therefore say until Chatzos? In order to distance a person from Naveira. Well, how do we know that? Kedetanya, because it's taught in a brisa, it says, Chachamim, asu siyag ledivrehem, sages, make for yourselves a fence for your words. Meaning the rabbis were commanded, as a mitzvah in itself, that they should always make a fence for the words that they say, which means to say, wherever a decree is instituted in a certain way, when the rabbis come to institute it in its final level of thought, in the final level of practice, the way it's going to come out ultimately, they should always put a fence around it. Why? And the reason for this particular instance why they need the fence, in all mitzvahs we need fences. For example, on Shabbos, the rabbis instituted the fence of Muktzeh, because the laws of Muktzeh say as follows. On Shabbos, you may not write. But the laws of Muktzeh say don't touch a pen. Well, what has touching a pen got to do with the malacha? If I touch a pen, I pick up the pen and I'm shaking the pen in the air, did I break Shabbos? You only break Shabbos if you write with a pen. So why did the rabbis say, but don't touch the pen, don't move the pen even, don't pick it up into your hand and already you've got it in your hand? Why? Because if I pick up the pen in my hand, I might come to write with it. Therefore, the rabbis put a fence. Don't even touch that pen, because the moment that you touch that pen, it could be possible that you will use the pen to write, and that will be a malacha. if we at least tell you, don't touch the pen. So then you'll stay away from touching the pen. If you accidentally touch the pen, you'll be aware, hey, I touched the pen. Don't write with it. Then at least you won't come to commit the avera of writing on Shabbos, the malacha. Another example of offense that the rabbis instituted was the laws of harchakot with regards to separation between a man and his wife. At the time that she's in niddah, even though the Torah says that the two may not be together in intimacy, nevertheless, there's no real direct prohibition for the two to touch each other in any way. But the rabbis instituted the solid laws of harchakot, which means keeping a distance from each other, to such a degree that a man or the wife should be careful not to pass each other things. And even if the one is holding on the one side of a stick, a long stick, and the other one is holding the other side of the stick, they should be careful not to pass it to each other. And they're not even touching each other, because these are the fences that the rabbis institute to prevent a person from committing the avera itself. Once the fence is in place, we know that if accidentally somebody, breaks through the fence, they'll stop themselves immediately. They'll be careful, or the fence will kind of just keep them away, and they won't come to the sin at all. Let's think of an example. If we have young children at home, and actually it doesn't matter whether there are young children, older children, or adults in the home, and one has a swimming pool, and one does not place a fence around the swimming pool. Well, if a person is walking close by and accidentally falls in, or alternatively, if something happens to them, they faint and they fall in accidentally, we know that it can have tragic consequences. So therefore, when you have a swimming pool in your home, make sure to put a fence around it. Because in case you're walking around it and you're not actually wanting to swim, you don't want to come too close to the swimming pool, because if you come too close you want to come too close to the fence, because if you come too close to the fence, you'll be reminded that the fence is there to protect one from the swimming pool. So therefore, we are very careful to put the fence up, and it protects us from the main danger, which is the swimming pool that we didn't want to fall into. When it comes to the laws of the Kriyat Shema, the rabbis instituted another fence. The Chachamim said that what we should do is we should put a fence around the recitation of the Kriyat Shema. Although Rabbi Eliezer says, say the Kriyat Shema until a third of the evening, 3 hours or 4 hours into the evening, and although Rabban Gamliel says until Amud HaShachar, but the Chachamim, they agree with Rabban Gamliel. So why did they say until Chatzos? Because Chachamim, they had to make a fence for their words. Why? Kedei shelo yehei adam ba min hasadeh. In case a person will come from the field, ba'erev, in the evening, v'omer, and he'll say, Eleik lebeisi, I'll go home, v'ochal kima, then I'll eat a little bit, v'eshteh kima, and then I'm going to drink a little bit, v'ishan kima, then I'm going to sleep a little bit, v'achar kach, and afterwards, ikra kriyat shema v'etpalel, I'll say the kriyat shema and I will daven. So this is the nature of people. What do they say? They had a hard day at work. They'll say, you know what? I'll go home, I'll eat a little bit, I'll drink a little bit, I'll sleep a little bit, and afterwards I'll recite the Kriyat Shema as I should, and then I'll daven my Shmona Esrei. Well, what will happen? V'chotafto sheina, but then sleep overtakes him. V'nimtza yashen kol halayla, and he fell asleep for the whole night. Aval, but rather, what did the Chachamim want to tell a person? Adam ba min hasadeh ba'erev, a person comes from the field in the evening, which means he comes home. Nichnas the Beis HaKnesset, the first thing he should do is go immediately to the Beis Knesset, go to the shul. Imra likros, if it is custom to read, so then, for example, he's going to do his reading of the Kriyat Shema at that point in time. Korei, he reads. The Imra lishnois, and if it is custom, here he says here, if it is custom to learn if it is custom to read as in Tanakh, meaning the Chumash is going to read the Mikra, so then he should read. V'imra gil lishnois, and if it is custom to study Mishnah, shoneh, he should study Mishnah. V'korei kriyat shema u'mitpalel, and then while he's at shul, he reads the kriyat shema and he davens. V'ochel pito u'mevarech, and then he eats his bread and he makes his blessing, which means to say this is the correct order. The Chachamim are telling us the correct procedure. Instead of falling into the trap of saying, when you finish your day of work, come home, and when you come home, you'll eat a bit, you'll drink a bit, you'll rest a little bit. The next thing you know, the whole evening will pass by, and you'll miss out on saying the Kriyat Shema as you should have. So the Chachamim said, recite the Kriyat Shema only till Chatzos, meaning what? Prevent you from overstepping the boundary and then accidentally missing out on Kriyat Shema altogether. So therefore, what should you do? The Gemara tells us, the Chachamim say, the moment you come back from work, go straight to the Beis Knesset. If you want to study something, study what you want to study. When you finish your studies, say the Kriyat Shema. Then when you come home, then you are able to eat your bread, make your blessing. This is indeed the Gemara that we're dealing with. Make your blessing, Berachot, and enjoy the food. The food should be eaten only after one has already recited the Kriyat Shema already. Let's take a look at the halacha over here on the side. A person, it says, in order to prevent a situation where a person comes home from the field in the evening, a person may not eat or sleep during the half hour preceding the time for the recitation of the evening Shema. If one began to eat and that time arrived, he must interrupt his meal and recite the Shema without its blessings before continuing his meal. After completing his meal, he recites the Shema with its blessings and recites the evening prayer. This halacha is in accordance with the unchallenged Braita cited over here. And he brings down all the sources. For those people who are more interested in learning the halacha, check it out in the Rambam, Sefer Ahava, Hilchos Tefillah, and the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, 235-2. This is not a shir in halacha, but we see that the halacha clearly comes from the Gemara that we've just read. V'chol ha'over al divrei chachamim chayev misa. And then the Gemara makes an unbelievable statement, powerful statement. Anybody who transgresses the words of the Chachamim will be liable to death. Now, this is an amazing statement. There are many people, for example, who come along and they say, the rabbis make up that law. Well, if the rabbis make it up, what difference does it make whether I transgress it or not? If the Torah says to me, you may not do X, Y, Z, but the rabbis told me, you may not also do these things in addition. And the rabbis are really making a fence to protect us from committing the Aveira. So the person says, but who are the rabbis anyway? The rabbis said to us one thing, but the Torah says another. Why do I have to listen to the words of the rabbis? Says the Gemara. A person who transgresses the words of the sages is liable to the death penalty. Says the Gemara, continuing, Ma shana b'chol dukta delo kasani chayev misa umay shana haka de kasani chayev misa. What is the difference, or what is the reason that in all places, meaning wherever we learn halakha with regards to the rabbi's enactments, it doesn't teach over there that a person is chayev misa, but over here, in particular with regards to the recitation of the Kriyat Shema in the evening, what is the difference that over here it does teach chayev misa, that a person is liable to the death penalty? Why are we learning about the death penalty with regards to the recitation of the Kriyat Shema until Chatzos and the stringency and so on and so forth as the rabbis instituted it? But we don't see this expression coming up at every single point in time when we deal with the halachas that the rabbis instituted. Ibais Ema, an expression in the Gemara which says, if you once say, which means to say, I'm going to give you one idea, and then I'm going to give you another idea, meaning if the first idea can be proven that it's not strong enough, we can use the second idea as an additional point to show why we need the second point as well as the first point. The first point says the following, Mishum de'ika ones sheina. The first reason that the rabbis are decreeing that is such a strong thing, a person who transgresses the words of the rabbis over here is going to be chayev misa, is going to be liable to the death penalty, is because there is the problem of sleep over here, which means to say that if a person is overcome with sleep, so he has to be very careful. The ibas amen, if you once say, which means to say, if you're not worried about the sleep, but a person might come to transgress something else. What will he come to transgress? To exclude the one who said, Tefillas Arvis Rishus, that the evening prayer is voluntary, which means to say that the idea is as follows. We know that Shacharis is obligatory. The morning prayer is obligatory. We know that mincha is obligatory because Shachris and mincha are both taking up the place instead of the korbanot, which are offered in the morning and the afternoon. But the thing is that with regards to the Ma'ariv prayer in the evening, there is no offering in the Beis HaMikdash, which therefore corresponds to the evening prayer. Shacharis corresponds to the morning offering. Mincha corresponds to the afternoon offering. But the Ma'ariv prayer doesn't correspond to anything. And therefore we see from this that Ma'ariv seems to be a voluntary prayer. You don't really have to daven it if you don't want to. Answers the Gemara on this subject, Kamash Melan D'Chovah. It comes to teach us that in fact Ma'ariv is obligatory, which means to say it's so strong. Don't transgress the words, even though it's only seems to be only the Chachamim are instituting it. Nevertheless, the words themselves are so strong as to tell us, be careful. Don't make up things in your mind that say, but the evening, that's a voluntary prayer. No. So there are two reasons. One, because maybe sleep will overcome the person. And even if you don't say it, that's a good enough reason, because maybe he won't oversleep. There's another reason that we have to be careful. And that is from the people who come along and they say, but Ma'ariv, that's only voluntary. Comes to teach us, Ma'ariv, it's an obligation. Nobody can get away with not davening Ma'ariv just because they think that it's a voluntary prayer. Let us take a look at these notes on the bottom, which help us understand this part of the sugya that we're learning. The opinions of the rabbis and Rabban Gamliel, although the Gemara's proposed solution seems to be the most straightforward, based on the formulation of the Mishnah, there is another possible solution. One could assert that both the rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer holds that the time when one goes to sleep lasts until midnight. And it was Rabbi Eliezer who issued a decree to prevent a situation where one would fail to recite the Shema before midnight. Therefore, the discussion in the Gemara was necessary, which means to say over here, according to this note, that there was a third possibility to the whole story. The third possibility is that Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim are indeed arguing with each other in the principle as follows. It's not the level of the Chachamim against Rabban Gamliel. It's the argument that's going on between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Because Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim are both agreeing that the Kriyat Shema should be said only until the midnight. But Rabbi Eliezer is the one who is cautious. And he says, even though you could recite the Kriyat Shema until midnight, it should only be recited until until 3 hours into the evening, which is a quarter of the evening. Why? To protect one, lest it be that a person fall asleep and then he misses out on the real opportunity, which ultimately lasts until midnight. What is a siyag offense, as we discussed before? This refers to a decree. Generally, a prohibition is issued by the sages with regard to an action or an object which is essentially permitted. The decree is for the purpose of preventing people from sinning. Usually, decrees were enacted in connection with matters that were liable to ultimately lead to serious transgressions. However, occasionally, the purpose of a decree was to establish consistent standards. For example, if people are permitted to perform one action, they may mistakenly believe that similar prohibited actions are permitted. Some decrees were also issued by the sages because of an incident that occurred in which the danger of transgression, either actual or potential, arose. They issued a decree prohibiting that action for all later generations. It's quite fascinating to see these ideas come up. One of the interesting halachot that I would like to perhaps just share just off the cuff on the spur of the moment, which is quite fascinating, the same idea of these fences and ideas is the concept that before a woman goes to the mikvah, for example, she must make certain that her body has no intervening substances that intervene as she goes down into the water. For example, if there is something that's sticking to her skin and she goes into the mikvah and she goes under the water, the tevilah that she does will not make her pure because she has an intervening subject, an item that separates her between her and the water needs to touch all the parts of the body. So if she goes into the water with, for example, a scab on her hands, and the scab is actually intervening and it's not doing any good on the body, depending on the particular details of what the scab is like, it can cause an intervention, which means that when she goes under the water, that will not have an effect, and she will have to remove the scab in a way that it's part of the skin rather than be something that's sticking on top of the skin and it's causing a problem as an intervening substance. So now let's take another example. What about if a woman has food that's caught between her teeth when she goes into the mikvah? She needs to floss her teeth well so that even though the water won't theoretically go into her mouth and pass through her teeth, still the teeth must be absolutely clean, that there is nothing intervening between the teeth, the natural teeth, and the opening gaps between each of the teeth. Now, for example, what about if a woman eats chicken or meat? Well, the chicken or meat can get stuck into the teeth. And as a result of that, it becomes a little trickier because it could be likely that when she goes to the mikveh, she might not have removed this chicken or meat sufficiently. And as a result, her mikveh tevilah will be considered to be null and void. Now, as a result of this, the sages decreed that a woman on the day preceding the evening of her immersion, she should not eat things like meat and chicken and so on and so forth, because maybe the food will remain stuck in her teeth, and as a result of that, the immersion will not be valid. Okay? But today's times, everybody is using dental floss, and they make sure that they can remove all these things so well that there won't be a problem of the meat or the chicken. So, for example, if it did turn out that accidentally the woman did indeed eat some chicken on the day preceding her mikveh immersion, and she asks a rabbi shaila, of course, everybody should ask their own personal rabbis what to do in each situation. But in a general sense, if the woman did do this accidentally, but she did floss her teeth very well, and she made sure that there wasn't an intervening substance between the teeth, but in other words, separating her from the water, then her immersion will still be valid. So the point is, if indeed it is that the dental floss could remove the substance between her teeth in today's times, which perhaps they didn't have in those days, why is it that the rabbis were so strong today to say that even in today's times, the woman may still not eat the chicken or meat on the day preceding the evening of when she goes to the mikveh? And the rabbis decree because it's the concept of law plug. We don't want to make a separation between what we think we can do today's times in comparison to how things were in previous times. And if the rabbis decreed it to be such, then that is what the halacha is. And that is what we're talking about here. The concept of fences is there to protect us from the possibility of something happening. If it will be that the rabbis decreed a fence, we have to be careful to accept the fence they decreed, even if we know better. Because unless there is a halakhic leniency that allows us to go in that direction, because we have asked an expert in the field, an expert posek, an expert halakhic authority, and he has told us that indeed we can rely upon a lenient opinion under these circumstances. Unless that happens, we must rely only upon the opinion of the rabbis according to the fence that they have set up. And that is there to protect us. Anyone who transgresses the pronouncements of the sages is liable to receive the death penalty. The special status accorded to the sages, and especially the fences that they erected around the Torah, could be rendered ineffectual if not practiced with the same stringency as the Torah itself. In several cases, the Gemara says, the sages invested their pronouncements with more stringency than Torah laws. Since Torah laws were generally observed more vigilantly than rabbinic laws, it was necessary to insist upon fulfillment of the latter so that they would not be dismissed. Clearly, liable to receive the death penalty does not refer literally to a court-imposed death penalty, but rather comes to convey that one who transgresses rabbinic pronouncements is deserving of death because he committed a transgression before God, which means to say we're not going to actually put the fellow to death, but the concept is to tell us the danger involved. For example, again, if we were to imagine a situation of a swimming pool, and a child is walking around the swimming pool and then falls into the swimming pool accidentally, and somebody saves the child is out of danger, no problems. But for whatever reason, the person who has this particular swimming pool, who did not put the fence up and so on and so forth, is caught out because they didn't put the fence up, and they're taken to court because this particular child fell in and could have actually died. So the the judge might issue a type of a fine or a penalty on the person and say, I'm issuing a penalty because you didn't put a fence up. And the fellow will say, but nothing happened to the child. The child is 100% safe. And the judge might turn to the person and say, you are correct. The child might be 100% safe. But you know what? You could be liable for a life sentence in prison or worse, because the child might have died on account of your irresponsibility of not putting up that fence. So we don't mean to say necessarily that the person is going to get the death penalty, but he's putting himself into a situation whereby he's certainly liable for something. He has not accepted the decree of the rabbis. He has not accepted the fence that was there to protect him from what it is that he should have done. We're not going to give him the actual death sentence, but he should realize the severity of the avera that he has committed. The Gemara continues with a new subject now. Omar Mar, the master said, Koirei kriyat Shema umitpalel. Here is what the din is. He should recite the kriyat Shema and then he davens, which means to say that after reciting the reading of the Shema, he davens the Amidah. That is the rule. If you look in your shacharis, when you daven the morning prayers, you'll notice that first of all, we daven the Shema, and after we daven the Shema, we say a particular short tefillah, and we say, Baruch atah Hashem ga'al Yisrael, and immediately after saying this blessing, we daven the Shemona Esrei. This teaching, this brisa that we learnt about, is Messiah lay the Rabbi Yochanan. This helps out according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. To Omar Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said the following: Ezehu ben ha'olam haba, who is a person of the world to come, which means to say, who is deserving of the world to come? The Gemara answers, this is the person who is deserving of the world to come. You thought you had to perform thousands upon millions upon whatever mitzvahs, and Rabbi Yochanan teaches, if you want to know whether or not you can receive the world to come, here is a proof. This is a person who joins the Geula, which means Baruch atah Hashem, Ga'al Yisrael, who has redeemed the Jewish people, meaning from slavery, that God took us out of Egypt. And immediately when you say Ga'al Yisrael, you immediately daven the Shemona Esrei in the evening, which seems to be the custom that we do. We say Baruch atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, and shortly afterwards we go and we daven our Shemona Esrei. So a person who davens in this way is a person who will receive the world to come. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Oimer, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Tefilas ba'emtza tiknun. He teaches that the prayers, which means the Shemona Esrei that we daven, is to be set up in the middle of our davening, which means, what is exactly is he talking about? He's saying that when we daven the shacharis prayer, we begin with the Shema, and then we daven Shemona Esrei. When it comes to davening the evening prayer, Arvis, we daven Shemona Esrei, and then the Shema. Because according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he says that the prayers were instituted to be in the middle, which means first Kriyat Shema, then Shemona Esrei. Then in the evening, Shemona Esrei, then Kriyat Shema. The tefillahs are put into the middle. But this brisa that we said, Koirei Kriyat Shema Umit Palel, that he davens the Kriyat Shema and then he davens, is a support for Rabbi Yochanan. Because Rabbi Yochanan says, who is a person who deserves the world to come, he's going to get the world to come. It's a person who joins Geula to Tefillah, which means whether you're davening Shachris or whether you're davening Arvis, first you make the bracha of Ga'al Yisrael, and only afterwards you daven Shemona Esrei. B'ma'kar mipalge. In what are they arguing? The Gemara asked a question. What is the practical difference between these two ideas? I don't quite get it. One says daven Shema Shemona Esrei, Shema. The other one says Shema Shemona Esrei, Shema Shemona Esrei. What's the problem? What's the difficulty in this? What are they arguing about? Now, when one argues in Torah, there are usually two ways of an argument taking place. And this is exactly what the Gemara is now addressing. Ibais Eima. If you want, you could say, remember we've had this expression before, Ibais Eima, if you want, I'll tell you. They were arguing about Kra, a verse. which means to say the argument as to whether or not we have to follow order number 1 or order number 2 is based on a verse. E bais ema sevara. And if you want say, it's based on logic. It's not based on a verse. There's a logic to the idea of Shema and then Shmona Esrei, Shema and Shmona Esrei, or there's a logic to the idea of Shema, Shmona Esrei, Shmona Esrei, Shema. Or alternatively, there's an actual verse, and the verse is what's going to tell us the order. Which one is it? E bais ema sevara. If you want say, it's logical, which means to say the Gemara is going to prove to us now why there's a logic in the two opinions. And that's what they were arguing about. Why? The Rabbi Yochanan seva, Rabbi Yochanan, who said to us that Shema, Shmona Esrei, Shema, Shmona Esrei, Geula, Shmona Esrei, Geula, Shmona Esrei. The reason is Geula me'ota nami have. You should know something, says Rabbi Yochanan to us. He says that the Geula, the redemption when we left Egypt, really also happened in the evening. Well, when did the Jewish people leave Eretz Mitzrayim? They left formally in the daytime. They did not leave in the evening. Why? Because they left at that point in time when already the sun was rising. And there was a point in time that there was the sun and there was the moon. But at the end of the day, there was enough light to identify that they were going out of Egypt with the light of the sun. And therefore, they were going in total disregard for Pharaoh. They were leaving in bright sunlight in front of him. They weren't trying to escape in the middle of the night that Pharaoh couldn't catch them as if they were thieves leaving in the middle of the night. They went while it was the daytime. But Rabbi Yochanan says the truth is that the Geula happened also at the nighttime. How do we know that? Because at the time that the plague of the firstborn happened, this was already at Chatzot. It was already at midnight. And so therefore midnight was already the start of the process of the Geula. And even though the Jewish people only left Egypt formally when it became daylight, nevertheless, they were already redeemed to an extent already at the Chatzos, which was midnight, which is the night time. And therefore, it sounds logical. It's fair to say that just as they left in the morning, which we say is Shema, and then Geula, which leads us into the Shmona Esrei, Geula, because that's the time of the Geula. In the evening, there was also Geula. And so therefore, it's fair to say, says Rabbi Yochanan, that first we recite Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael, and then afterwards we recite the Shmona Esrei, because the Geula happened also at night. Ela, but rather, Geula me'aliyasa lo havya ela atzafra. The real superior redemption did not happen until the morning, which means at the morning time, the Jewish people were really freed from Egypt completely. They left Egypt. In the evening, they didn't leave Egypt. They were still there. They were waiting for the morning. For Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Savar, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who held that first we do Shema with the Geula prayer and then Shmona Esrei. And then for Arvis, we do Shmona Esrei and then afterwards the Shema, which is out of context. What was he holding? What was his thought process? What was his logic? Keivan de lo havia ela mitzafra. The truth of the matter is that since the Geula really happened only in the morning, lo havia Geula ma'aliyasa. So therefore, the evening Geula was not really to be considered as the real time of the Geula. So basically, in terms of logic, Rabbi Yochanan is holding that in a certain respect, there was redemption in the evening, and therefore the same laws should apply to the evening Geula to Shmona Esrei as applies to the morning Geula and Shmona Esrei. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi also worked on logic. The logic is at the end of the day, the Jewish people were only redeemed during the daytime, not the evening. And therefore you can't use it as a proof to say to me that first we do Geula and then Tefillah. Second point, the Ibais Ema Kra. If you like, we can prove this whole concept and the argument that they were arguing about based on a verse of the Torah. Ushnehem mikra echad darshu. And actually both of them, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, were in fact arguing about the same verse. Ushnehem mikra echad darshu. They were both expounding on the same verse. Tiksiv, because the verse says, B'shoch b'cha, uvkumecha, in your lying down and in your arising. What does that mean? How can I learn Rabbi Yochanan's opinion that he says in your lying down and in your rising? And I must understand from that the evening corresponds to the morning. And yet Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, no, the evening doesn't correspond to the morning. And I'm using the same words to prove to you that the evening doesn't correspond to the morning. Rabbi Yochanan Svar, Rabbi Yochanan held the following. Makishchiva lekima. He compares going to sleep, lying down, in the same way as rising up. That's his idea. Let's speak about it as a verse. In your lying down and in your rising. Let us compare the lying down to the rising up. Just as it is that when a person gets up in the morning, he says the Kriyat Shema, and then afterwards he davens the Shmona Esrei. Av shechiva nami Kriyat Shema v'achar kach tefillah. So too, you know what you should do? When you lie down, do the Kriyat Shema first, and then afterwards daven Shmona Esrei after you've said Gal Yisrael. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Savar, and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds, Makish shechiva lekima. I'm going to compare the lying down to the rising. How will that work? Ma kima kriyat shema samuch lemitato. I'm using the same verse to prove to you a different concept. Just as it is that when we wake up in the morning, we do the kriyat shema close to our beds, which means to say not literally that we're standing next to the bed, but it means to say that from the time that we wake up in the morning, the first thing that's closest to us relative to our waking up is Kriyat Shema. And then afterwards we do Shmona Esrei. Av shechiva, so too when we lie down, nami Kriyat Shema samuch lemitaso, so too the Kriyat Shema should be close to one's bed, which means going to sleep. So just as it is that the Kriyat Shema is closest to me when I wake up in the morning, the Kriyat Shema should be closest to me also when I go to sleep. And therefore the order is as follows. In the morning, I do the Kriyat Shema and then the Shmona Esrei. In the evening, I do the Shmona Esrei and then I do the Kriyat Shema. Let us take a look at some of these notes, which are very important to us. It is one who juxtaposes redemption to prayer. Zeh hasomech geula l'tefillah. The halacha. One must juxtapose redemption and prayer with no interruption between them, both in the morning prayer and in the evening prayer. And we're going to see this later on and discuss it in more detail. But in the meantime, we're jumping ahead and we're seeing what the halacha is and why it is that way. However, those verses and blessings instituted by the sages to be recited between redemption and prayer, such as Lord, open my lips, Hashem sefasai titach ufi agiti lasecho, before prayer, or the blessing may our eyes see after redemption, for example, the hashki, all the different prayers that we say in the daytime, meaning coming after the Gal, meaning in the evening after Gal Yisrael, may our eyes see after redemption, are not considered interruptions. Rather, together with redemption, they are considered one long blessing of redemption. While Rabbi Yochanan disagreed with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who is considered greater, so Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who is greater. The halacha was ruled in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, because the thrust of the discourse in the Gemara was conducted in accordance with his opinion. Although some halachic decisors ruled otherwise, the accepted practice is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, which means, what do? We do the halacha in the following way. In the morning, we do Shema, we say the bracha Gal Yisrael, and then we go into Shmona Esrei. And in the evening, we do again Shema, we do the Gal Yisrael, then we say a bracha or two, and then afterwards, we again recite the Shmona Esrei in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, against the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who also had some very worthwhile things to understand, the logic and the understanding of the verse, but we can only follow one opinion, and the opinion is Rabbi Yochanan. Redemption and prayer, geula utfila. The essence of the blessing of redemption is the recalling the redemption from Egypt. Yet the Exodus is far more than an isolated incident The Exodus was the birth of Judaism and its most basic image. Therefore, this is not only true regarding the Exodus as a whole, but also regarding each and every one of its details, which play a role in Judaism. Juxtaposing redemption and prayer is a continuation of the Exodus, which means every time that we do it, every single day that we do it, we are holding on to this concept of joining redemption to prayer. With the Jewish people redeemed from their exile and travails and immediately turning to God in prayer, that is our nature. Once we're redeemed, who do we turn to? To God. Please help us, God, we say. Now, finally, we're redeemed. We really need to pray, God, lead us on the right path. Because when a person is enslaved, well, it's easy to just do what has to be done, because as a slave, one has no choice but to do whatever the master demands of the slave. But when one is free, then one can get a bit confused as to what to do. So now that I'm a free person, what must I do with my life? The first thing to do is to pray to God. Once I'm redeemed, and the only being that I need to serve is the creator of all existence, the creator of the world, I must pray to that being, to this creator, and ask him, what is it that I'm supposed to do? This is the nature of the Jew. He is redeemed, and then he prays to God, please tell me what to do. I'm no longer a slave. I'm only a slave. I'm only a servant to you, God. One who successfully connects through his life and prayer the blessing of redemption with his personal prayer to God merits the world to come, and is one whose life is conducted on a high spiritual plane. Look at the beautiful words that he says over here, that we said that a person who joins the Geula to Tefillah merits the world to come. How does he merit the world to come? Because a person who is in a state of freedom and he prays to God to continually lead him on the right path of what it is that he should do in the world, this is indeed a person who will merit the world to come. Now, he also brings some really nice information here about the personalities of the Gemara, the rabbis involved. We're going to read here before we conclude who Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, this argument that's going on here between Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan, and we don't follow the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, but nevertheless, who was he? He was one of the greatest Amoraim of the first generation in Eretz Israel. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was, according to some opinions, the son of Levi ben Sisi, one of the outstanding students of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, none other than the redactor of the Mishnah. Apparently, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi himself was one of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's younger students. Many halakhic disputes are recorded between him and Rabbi Yochanan, who was apparently his younger disciple colleague. In general, the halakha is ruled in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, even against Rabbi Yochanan, who was the leading authority at that time. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was also a renowned teacher of Agadah. Because of the great esteem in which he was held, Aggadic statements in his name are cited at the end of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. A great deal is told of his piety and sanctity. He is regarded as one of the most righteous men who ever lived. Among other things, it is told that he would sit with the most dangerously infected lepers and study Torah. He was famous as a worker of miracles to whom Elijah the prophet appeared, and his prayers were always answered. According to tradition, the angel of death had no dominion over him, and he entered the Garden of Eden alive. He taught many students. All of the sages of the succeeding generation were his students to some degree, and cited Torah pronouncements in his name. His son, Rabbi Yosef, was also a Torah scholar and married into the family of the Nasi, which means from the family of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and his children and his descendants. Now, he's just giving us an insight over here into some Gemara language. We learned this expression, b'maika mipalgi, in what are they arguing? What does this expression mean? That is its literal meaning. This question is asked when the practical difference between the two opinions is clear. However, the underlying principle at the basis of the dispute is not. Clarifying this question is important, not only in terms of understanding the dispute, but also in terms of extrapolation from the specific case regarding which they disagreed to cases regarding which they did not disagree explicitly, and thereby arrive at additional halakhic conclusions. Compare this with what is the practical difference between them, which is the my nafkamina. What is the practical difference between them, as opposed to b'maika mipalgi, in what are they arguing? So we need to look at different examples to see exactly what the differences of these two expressions mean. So we're going to conclude over here. We've reached our end, and we've ended off really at a very nice, exciting place again, where the argument ends off. this is the opinion of an argument between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan in terms of the order of reciting the Kriyat Shema and the Shemona Esrei in terms of Shachris and Mariv. And as we learned out in conclusion, that we're following the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who says that first we recite the Kriyat Shema, and then we recite the Geula, Baruch Atah Hashem, Ga'al Yisrael, and thereafterwards we recite the Shemona Esrei, both in Shachris and in Ma'ariv, because whichever way you look at it, whether on a level of logic or whether on a level of understanding the verse itself, Rabbi Yochanan wins out the argument, and we follow his opinion. Thank you very much for joining me today in this shiur, another exciting section of the Gemara Berachot. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please do click on the like button, the bell button, the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel, and click on the bell in order to be notified of further shiurim. I'm Eliyahu Sher from Chassid Ve'emet, and I welcome you to be in touch with me, and I would be delighted to be in touch with you. And of course, I encourage you to become a partner in all the things that we're doing, and in any way that you want to contribute in some way, feel free to be in touch with me, and we can discuss things further. And of course, if you want to join a shiur, or either to join one of these live shiurim that we're doing like now, or alternatively to have a private shiur, also please do be in touch with me, and I look forward to being in touch with you in the near future. I wish you everything of the best, and I wish you shalom, shalom, bye-bye.